Ještě jednou krásný dobrý večer, já vás všechny tady zdravím a vítám. Mé jméno je Václav Němeček a mám tu čest a radost znovu uvítat mého přítele, kamaráda Gregora Steinmauera, který se mnou spolupracuje už mnoho roků. A tady ty webináře mě nesmírně baví a naplňují. A zároveň je to člověk, se kterým jsem už ušel kus cesty a známe se jako přátelé i jako mentoři. Ten dnešní webinář je věnovaný tématu mužské sexuality a jejich různých aspektů a souvislostí. Určitě vydržte až do konce, protože během toho webináře pro vás má Gregor nachystanou i nějakou praktickou ukázku. Něco skutečného, co si můžete dneska odnést a využít ve svém životě. A současně za úplným závěru webináře na vás čeká zajímavá forma toho, co se všemi těmito poznatky můžete dělat dál ve svém životě. Mám ještě potřebu uvítat ženy, kterých tu je několik. Pár se jich dotazovalo, jestli se můžou účastnit tohoto webináře, i když je věnovaný mužské sexualitě. Takže děkujeme za účast, vítány, dámy, určitě naslouchejte a inspirujte se. Jsme si vědomí toho, že je to zajímavý téma, naslouchat tomu, čím se muži baví, tématu sexuality. Takže já bych si dovolil začít a tou první částí, kterou bych chtěl začít, je takové uvedení Gregora, mentora, učitele, lektora, který pracuje s muži už mnoho let a věnuje se této tématice opravdu dlouho. Nedokážu říct, kolik roků, ale určitě to bude ke 20. Má mnoho zkušeností a já bych ho rád uvítal. Ahoj Kušru, já tě vidím, slyším.
Hello, can you hear me well? Okay, vítejte, welcome everybody, hello. Good evening.
Dejte palec nahoru. A moje první otázka na tebe, Gregore, je vlastně, jaký tvůj životní příběh, nebo jakým způsobem ses vlastně dostal až sem na ten dnešní webinář, jaký všechny životní události tě přivedly sem, aby vlastně diváci, muži i ženy, kteří nám naslouchají, měli možnost porozumět tomu, co tě přivedlo až sem.
Yes, so first of all, welcome everybody. It's really nice to see so many people are joining for this topic that is so central to our life. And I just want to say also welcome to the women that are online. And I'm going to speak more to the male experience or to what men experience around sexuality, but of course that applies for men and women and for the masculine and the feminine aspect in all of us. So you will definitely also hear something worthwhile if you're calling in as a woman. Yeah, and to your question, Václav, I would say, when did it start so that I end up where I am now, traveling the world and working with men and teaching men? I would say it started a very long time ago, like it did for most of us. And like probably for most of us, with a mixture of suffering and curiosity, like having questions that I couldn't answer and also experiences that were maybe painful or difficult. And
no,
just heard somebody else's voice. If I would look back, where did it start? I think it started in a very unconscious way when I was about probably 19 years old, something like this. And I remember the first time really intensely thinking about this. And this was an experience when I was going out and like partying with my friends, like what you do when you're that age. And I never experienced myself having really difficulty finding women or getting partner. At the same time, I was also quite shy. and insecure. And I had noticed a little bit that certain women were a bit out of the league for me. I felt like I'm kind of safe to go with certain women, and there were some women that I really wanted and were attracted to, and I didn't really dare to go fully for what I wanted. And then one time I wasn't at a party, and there was a woman I really liked, and I basically wanted to get to her and take her home with me, as you do in that age, maybe. And then what happened was I started to do my usual thing, being trained as a nice guy, coming from Austria, like some Czechs can probably relate to that, being a gentle guy, gentleman. And so basically I had fun with her. It was a big party, lots of people. I was doing my usual thing of talking and being enchanting probably and having fun. And in my book, doing all the right things. But I didn't realize, what I didn't know then was I never told her that I actually liked her, that I fancied her, and that I made a move. And then what happened, we got more and more drunk probably, and the party went on. And at one point she was gone, and only the day later I realized she left, not with me, but with a guy that I would at that time call like a more simple, uninteresting, but more macho kind of type of guy. And I was so puzzled by that experience, and she was signaling to me during the whole night that she liked me. And I was like, why on earth didn't it go forward? And that led me really to an exploration about what's going on there between men and women, and why, even though I'm doing all the right things and nice things, why am I not getting what I want? And that was one of the places that led me a little bit later than in my early 20s to work with myself, doing therapy and groups, and then also joining men's groups. And then I realized, well, I was still hoping that the world, or in this case, a woman or women of the world, would respond to me by me being just nice and doing all the right things. And I kind of learned an important lesson that if I don't go for what I want, it's not going to happen. And that was the first very important step. And then I went on a big, long journey. There were a few other crucial moments that led me to dive deeper into the subject. And yeah, fortunately, I found some important keys on that journey.
No, děkuju. A mě hnedka k tomu zajímá na té tvojí dlouhé cestě, která začala tenkrát na té diskotéce. Co vlastně se ti za ty roky povedlo všechno změnit na tobě samotným?
Yeah, I would say there was a few hallmarks, and there was another very important moment. So one was that I then, with the help of other good friends and male friends, and understanding about myself, that first of all, recognizing that I was insecure about asking directly for what I wanted. And this is something that I know other men are experiencing also, that especially in intimate relationships or in male-female, like man-woman relationships, to ask directly for what you want can be very scary. And it can be very difficult. And even though you think you know what you want, it's difficult to go for that. So, and for me, it was a huge breakthrough to understand that, and also especially with the help of men's groups, to understand, yeah, there's nothing wrong in wanting something, because implicitly what I felt is that what I probably also received as a cultural conditioning and from my family system and other men or women around me, that if I want too much, something's right, as something is not right about that. That classical phrase of like, men only want sex, was something that I didn't want to be part of that camp. So I became kind of a nice guy, of course, which a lot of people know. And then, so with the empowerment of other men, and it really changed. And then understanding and experiencing this in relationships, in that the woman actually enjoys that I come forward with what I want. It's not a burden to her. It's a gift that I bring into the relationship. And that was a huge breakthrough. And sometimes I still work through that. That's like, because these are deep, deep layers in ourselves. And then the next, I would say, next big hallmark, because we're talking about sexuality here and the many, many dimensions of sexuality. So the next hallmark came maybe when I was like 23 or something like this. And what happened, so I had, I would say, a relatively good relationship to my body and sexuality always. I was kind of fortunate in some ways. But I also, looking back now, I was like most of us, like terribly undereducated about what can actually happen in sexuality. It was like this kind of like physical gymnastics that feels good, and you get, maybe when you're lucky, you get heart connected, but it's performance oriented. It's like did you get an orgasm? Did I have an orgasm? How long did it last? Like, did it feel good? Like this kind of like mechanics and performance kind of style. And then what happened is that I got a friend of mine gave me a book on Tantra, which is like the, let's say, the esoteric or Eastern arts of understanding sexuality in a much deeper way as an expression of our life force. And there were also practical ways of how to use lovemaking as a conscious art, not just for having an orgasm, but really connecting with yourself, connecting with the partner, feeling your power and feeling your heart and the many dimensions that come with it. And I remember I was super curious. I was like, wow, that's a whole new world. And then me and my partner at that time, we both read the book, and then kind of there was exercise instructions. And so we were eager to practice. And there was one instruction that the next time you go to bed, so to speak, before you get into the act of caressing each other or something, just lie there, breathe, and look into each other's eyes. And I thought, oh, okay, that's cool. Done that in groups before, that's easy. So let's do that, and the sex probably is going to be better even, and whatever. So, and I was not prepared for what happened then, because then we were in bed and preparing. And then we were lying there breathing, and then I started to really connect with my partner, and we had a beautiful relationship. Then we connected, and I understand now, I suddenly started to feel my heart very intensely, and like something opened. And then the next thing I felt was a lot of fear. And I had no idea first what's going on. I'm supposed to be feeling great and blissful now, and suddenly I opened to a lot of fear in myself. And that opened the next layer in my journey to understand that and now I know very well, and many, many, many men, we actually have a lot of fear also in ourselves, and shame also, to be really seen with what we want, what I want, and also to be open about it. It's quite an adventure. But then the good thing was that there was enough space and trust with me and my partner at that time to move forward, and it actually became a very beautiful exploration. And then through many, many years of practice, I was able to see that sexuality is so much more than just having sex, and how at the same time exploring my sexuality was a very profound way to get to know myself, and to get to know my power, get to know my love, and to get to know also my shadow aspects. And that in some way what I did in sexuality, like also how it was sometimes difficult to ask for what I want, being ashamed for wanting too much, and sometimes overriding my fear because let's just do some things, was very similar in certain ways in the world, how I was forming relationships, or how I was engaging with my work and my projects, and how I manifested things in the world. So it became a very powerful mirror for my patterns, and also a way where I could very explicitly kind of work on them, you know, like hands-on in the best sense of the world, where it was like a laboratory to explore myself, but also to learn a lot about love, and learn about also other people, like learn about the female body, the male body, and the differences, and there to understand a lot more that there's many things that we have in common, and there are many things where we are quite different, and there is so much to learn, and how important conflicts and communication are, like knowing how to handle conflicts and knowing how to communicate what you need, what's happening to you. So I'll leave it at that, but there's like, it's like entering a whole world, or discovering a whole new ocean, or part of a different planet.
Moc děkuju, to je krásný příběh. A já bych na něj navázal a vlastně bych se tě rád zeptal, Gregore, a co vlastně spatřuješ jako hodně specifického na mužské sexualitě v kontrastu s tou ženskou sexualitou, protože s tím máš ohromné množství zkušeností, jak osobních, tak terapeutických. Tak co ty považuješ za takovou jako esenci mužské sexuality, a když bychom ji měli ještě jako rozvinout mimo sexualitu se ženou, jako mimo milování a intimitu, co dalšího si vlastně zjistil, že ta mužská sexualita zahrnuje?
Can you say just, maybe I didn't get the translation, the last sentence?
Do you hear me well now? Yes.
I can hear you, and then I hear it also from Stana.
Yes. So I was asking, what are the aspects of masculine sexuality, and what do you find as a possible broadening of the scope, or the full scope you find out, either clinically, either with yourself personally, or other men?
Okay.
How would you describe what all aspects?
Okay, yes, I got it, Stana. It's fine. Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say there's two answers to that, and in a way that relates a little bit also to how I work with men, mostly, where I see there's two camps, where it's either camp power or camp heart that men fall into, or categories. And the first thing is that, so what is specific about male sexuality is just like anatomically, we have a forward or outward oriented energy. So I sometimes jokingly say we belong to the penetrating club. And it's kind of a joke, but it's also very true that one of the main features of a man's sexuality, if you're engaged in it with a sexual partner, is that you penetrate somebody. Now, penetration often has a connotation of like force, or like crossing a boundary, or maybe even doing something against the will of somebody else. Now, in sex, that hopefully is of course happening with consent, but still it's a very particular phenomenon when you go like you really take your energy and your wanting, and you penetrate another body. And to understand that this is a very powerful act, and it's very can be a very vulnerable and intense act, of course, for the receiving partner. But it's different if you're the one that is active, and if it's different if you're the one that is receptive in that process. anatomically, physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally. It's a very different experience. And to have an awareness about the significance of that already often changes something, because implicitly often there's a certain shame about wanting so much. So that's one thing that I see in men that feel like they want to be sensitive to how it is for the other person, and then you feel guilty, ashamed, or not quite confident about really going forward, so to speak. And what this points to is like a shaky connection to your own power as a man. And that's, again, then mostly what happens in sexuality, but it can happen in many other forms also in life. On the other hand, it can also be a place where you're so connected and identified with what you want, so that anyway, the other person is not really considered fully a person and is more like an object of your desire. And I want to have my pleasure, and you're connected with your drive and you're going, but you don't really notice how does it happen, what's going on in you. Like if you're a partner there, how is that for you if I come forward? And so in either way, there's something to learn, either to increase more sensitivity to notice, yeah, my energy is having an impact here, hopefully, like you want to create an impact, like that there is a mutual dance of pleasure happening, but also that there is maybe more trust in your own desire, and that this is a good thing in the world. Because if you, just to make that more explicit, like if you're in a relationship and you say like, oh, I'm afraid to hurt you, so I don't want to go in, it's like you're not helping. You know, like for you, this is your part of the contribution of the experience. So that's the ground floor, I would say. And then there is many floors to explore. That sexuality is, it starts with a physical encounter. You can have sex and not feel anything or be emotionally connected at all, and maybe that's even fine for some bit, but it will not nourish you really, as we all know, especially also if there is no love involved. And then in a way, with maturation, or let's say like when we're all teenagers, we're all horny and filled with hormones, and you're kind of chasing that pleasure and that kick, and that's perfectly normal. But if you want to do that until your end of your life, it's gonna get probably a bit stale. It's like, sometimes I say it's like eating McDonald's burgers and chips for 3 times a day. It's like, it's not good for your body, and it will not make you happy and nourished. So there's a lot more layers that sexuality can teach you about yourself, can teach you about your body, can teach you about your connection with yourself. It can teach you about how to really connect with another human being, to develop the qualities of your heart, to not collapse your power because somebody is maybe feeling not comfortable, but to be in a relationship with that, and at the same time really feel, what do you need? How is that for you? Which is the basis of every relationship that is in equal powers. And you can also keep developing sexuality further, where it becomes more like a spiritual practice, where through that deep encounter with another human being, you're clearing yourself, you're exploring yourself, but you're exploring also something larger than yourself, because people had sex since the beginning of time. You know, you didn't invent that. So there's something, it's like you happen in a continuum of life, and sexuality is like the basic drive through which we procreate, but we can also heal and learn and educate ourselves. And then, so I would say there's again, mostly people stay in one corner of a huge house, because that's what we know, which is like the physical act of sex, trying to get an orgasm or trying to create pleasure. It's also what you do when you go watch porn and masturbate. And I have no judgment about that, but it's good to know that you're exercising a very small aspect of sexuality. It's like you have this small room in a huge house, and you don't know that you could go and live in all these other places with amazing views and much more room. And again, there's nothing wrong with that room, but it's just not the complete story of what you can develop through sexuality. And so that's what I'm passionate about. And I would say also the developing power for integration and healing and strengthening oneself, if you really get curious about your sexuality and your relational patterns in life as a man.
Díky moc. Krásná odpověď, která hnedka mě navádí na další otázky, kterou je, už to načal, už si se toho trochu dotknul, a to je téma orgazmu a ejakulace, speciálně v mužském případě. Jak vlastně ty dnešní se svými zkušenostmi, jak vlastně nahlížíš na tu touhu po orgazmu, jestli je třeba, jsou nauky, které říkají, že jsou překážkou takové tužby, nebo jak vlastně ty vnímáš orgasmus jako takový a jak moc je třeba důležitý v celém tom domě té sexuality?
Okay. Thank you, Sander, for reminding me. And is the voice loud enough like this? Okay. I'll try to remember, but normally when I get passionate, I speed up with speaking. Okay. Yeah, that's another huge question. We could talk about orgasm for a few hours, just about that. I would say orgasm is like the kind of the way nature gets us hooked into developing ourselves, and also gets us hooked to sexuality, because through orgasm it feels so enlivening and so good most of the time that it feels like it's something we start to chase. And then there's a bit of a difference also in the male sexuality and in the female sexuality, that for men often, not always, but often it can be easier to reach orgasm, especially when we're young, which leads to a problem for most young men, that because this feels good and you want to have what feels good, so you start training yourself to go there as fast as possible. And then what happens is that we start to kind of couple the pleasure of sexuality with the momentary experience of the orgasm, which is a release. And even orgasm, or the ejaculation and orgasm, are not necessarily the same thing. This is another thing. When I heard that first, I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? That the experience of the physical ejaculation and orgasm often go simultaneously together, but not necessarily they are the same thing. So you can have an ejaculation without feeling orgasmic, and you can have an orgasmic experience, which is mostly an experience of expansion, of flow in your body, or state of opening or connectedness, or just feeling really very alive, without having an ejaculation. And this is an important understanding, because then you start to see, oh, I don't need to chase necessarily this thing in order to feel that. And most men and women don't know about that. And with practice, you can start to take this a little bit apart. And the result can be that you can basically enjoy sexuality in all its moments a lot more. Because if we're only happy once we reach the mountain, we'll try to run there fast, which teenagers practice a lot. And then later in life, and I'm talking more about boys or men, later in life, this becomes an obstacle because you trained yourself to go very fast. And then if you want to have a fulfilling experience with your partner, because the female or sexuality cycle often is a bit different, it takes more time and it has more sustenance, and it's a different curve. It often then doesn't go together. So you start to work, you need to work again to redo a pattern that you trained very strongly. But that's also a really good practice for men, because it also invites you to understand a lot more about yourself, understand about your body, about your, like how you regulate yourself, how you contain more energy without needing to release immediately. And that's a skill or a quality that you need in life everywhere, because it's basically how you contain stress without being stressed out, or without having to either get angry, without exploding, without collapsing, without giving up. So there's a powerful training that we can use for sexuality, but we can also really make use for everything in life that we want to create and build and sustain. And that's a big thing for men also, enjoy the journey. Because when we're only fixated on the orgasm, it's like you're hiking through a nice, beautiful forest, but you're only focused when you get out to the end point, rather than walking through the forest and you're like, this is beautiful, and enjoying with all my senses everything that is experiencing here. And if I then arrive at that point, fine. If I don't, also fine. And then of course there's a lot more to it, because with age it can become different, or it will become different. For women, often orgasm, or let's say for many women, it can be a difficult thing. And also even there I experienced, it's not just on the woman, it's a relational experience often. Same goes for men, when men say they have problems with premature ejaculation or difficulty with erections or all these kind of things. It's something personal, but it's also a relational experience. So there's a lot to explore around that. And basically with practice, I've seen so much that things can really get much more relaxed and therefore more joyful and more nourishing. And I believe this is possible for a lot of people. If you think you have a medical situation, it can be difficult, but even there, a lot more is possible than we normally think.
Skvělý. A mě to nabádá, já jsem zvědavý. Ty jsi mluvil o tom metaforickém domu, kterýmu můžeme říkat sexualita, mužská sexualita. A že orgasmus a ejakulace nebo touha za tím potěšením je, řekněme, jedna z těch místností. A mě by zajímalo z tvojí zkušenosti, jaká další oblast mužského života, kromě intimity a sexuality se ženou, je z tvého pohledu jako nejvíc ovlivněna kvalitou sexuálního prožívání? Nebo jak moc se ta sexualita, jako, kde se ještě nejvíc zrcadlí, tak v jaké části života může? Jestli je to třeba v práci, nebo nějak jako tvorbě, nebo ve sportu, nebo ve cvičení, meditaci, nebo ještě někde jinde.
You're not sure, so which aspect of a man's life is connected to his sexual experience?
Yeah, from your experience, what layer of man's life do you perceive is most affected
Mhm.
sexuality,
Mhm.
other than bad love
Yeah.
intention?
Yeah. Okay, got it. It's a good question. I have two answers. The first one, I would say all of those aspects, because I deeply believe and experience that nothing stays untouched. Like sexuality is some of the deepest connections we have with ourselves, because it's our deepest connection to life force. So this life force, in a way, creates and touches everything. So how you relate to that life force is will show up in all kind of ways. It's a bit like, if this is in the root, the branches and the leaves and the fruits of this roots of this tree will be accordingly. And then, having said that, of course, I think there are some aspects that are even more directly linked. And for men, I would see, what I see a lot is that it is connected to creating your life that you want, which means like manifesting also things in life. That means the way because when you're when you're active in your sexuality as a man, you're working with the life force that creates life. So that's not a small thing. And when you are active in life, you have a profession, or you work with projects, or even you want to build a house, you need a lot of energy and you need power, and you need the will to actually want to do something. Because if you want to build a house and you think it's a good idea, and you have an initial drive and you start digging for the foundation, and then you find out, well, it's hard, so let it be, metaphorically speaking, and that's kind of difficult, I'll do something else, you will never build a house. So all projects that are meaningful, and this even includes like building a relationship, a stable, powerful, loving relationship, an intimate relationship, or creating a family, it takes a lot of energy, and it takes perseverance. And this is often very much connected to the way you experience your life force running through you. If it's like quick, aroused, and like, and I'm looking for pleasure, but then once it's gone, like, let's say the arousal is gone, I'm not interested anymore. Or if you learn to maintain your interest and your will and your desire for something, and keep it alive for a while. And that, I think also, and for like, keep it going, even if it's not so pleasant in the moment. And the same then is true like in intimate relationships, or with couples that are together for a long time. I guess everybody who has been in a long-term relationship, you know that ideally in the beginning, it's very easy to have sex and to feel attracted, because your hormones are kicking you and you don't have much choice. And it's a beautiful thing. So you don't have to worry about feeling attracted to your partner. But then when life takes over more responsibilities and structures and demands of life, it can get challenging. Or men experience the situation, and women, that suddenly there's no more attraction, and maybe then also no more connection with each other. Mm-hmm. And then we can just say, yeah, that's how it is. But I really don't believe this, because I also have a very different experience, that with the right kind of practice, and I'm not saying it's easy, but it's possible, with the right kind of practices, we can maintain this kind of ongoing desire and interest and love for each other. It will most likely take different forms, because when you're 20, or 25, or together for the first months, it's different if you're 60 or 50 and been together for decades. It's just different. But different doesn't mean worse or better, or it should go back to how it was in the beginning. but it's important to honor that something is different and that it can stay alive, but that needs skill and practice and support most likely. And so it's the same with every meaningful project in life, that if you just hope that it goes with the same enthusiasm as in the beginning, you will probably not create something meaningful. So I would see that, especially for men, the capacity to build, to create, also to go for your big dreams, to really go for what you want, and not just play safe and small, but go for your heart's desire, is very strongly related to the way you engage in sexuality. And so there's a lot to learn, and it can also really turn something around from my experience.
Já moc děkuju. To nevím, jestli jsem na správném kanále. Já mám potřebu vlastně se k tomu přidat z mojí vlastní zkušenosti. A taky jsem samozřejmě vedl muže mnoho let a vedu páry a mám jako mraky zkušeností osobních i jiných, že skutečně vlastně ten kořen, to jádro v tom muži je vlastně ta sexualita. A vlastně ty jsi byl jeden z prvních mužů, který mě k tomuhle poznatku a prožitku, hlavně v mém těle, vlastně dovedl. Od té doby to ve mně je zhmotněný a ukotvený vlastně jednou provždy a čerpám z toho vlastně dodnes. Takže to hodně kvituju, že vlastně o tom mluvíš i v tomhle kontextu a stejně tak přikivuju k tomu tématu dlouhodobých partnerských vztahů, s kterými mám obrovské množství zkušeností z vedení párů, že o tu sexualitu v dlouhodobém vztahu je potřeba pečovat opravdu úplně jiným způsobem, než když nám to dá příroda zdarma v těch prvních fázích vztahu. Takže to je moc fajn a kvituju to. A mě by vlastně zajímalo ještě jedna taková jako otázka na tebe. Co bys dokázal říct o sobě, kým seš dnes, nebo kam tě tato praxe a tyhle poznatky, kam tě vlastně jako dovedly jako muže? Jak bys to popsal, jak vlastně, co je pro tebe takový jako cíl nebo jako směr, jakým se vlastně můžou muži jako vydat, kam je to může vyvinout, když vlastně pracují tímhle způsobem, třeba jak i ty.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I'll start with the second question. So my experiences with this kind of work, it's not that it creates a certain type of man, like you do this work or you do this training and then you come out this kind of man, like a poster boy of something. It's rather that you become who you are truly meant to be. And that's for me the biggest gift, to accompany men in becoming who they are meant to be, because we are not supposed to be all the same. That's just not how life is. And so everybody, when you do the work, you maybe have to learn some specific ways. And sometimes it's again like what I said in the beginning with the camp power and the camp heart. Some people have to learn a lot more about their power, and that their power is beautiful and strong and life affirming. And other people have to learn a lot more about sensitivity and feeling that other people also have feelings and needs, and not just what they want is what's right. And so I don't like the word balance, because it seems like then there's a perfect balance, and that's not how it is. But you become more balanced in the way who you are, which essentially is also what I wanted to say still before, is that an effect of this work with sexuality is that, yeah, you do things differently in the world, in your relationships, but very importantly, you start to have a different relationship with yourself, like with your real inner self. And there's like self-love sounds so cliche, but it's so true. Like being really okay with myself. And it doesn't mean like, everything is okay, I'm amazing, but like feeling truly at home with yourself. And the paradoxical thing is that this is the most attractive state that a human being can be in. If as a man, you come to this, and as a woman as well, you naturally become attractive, because that's who we are. We become radiant. And so for me, so that was the entry to my personal story. For me, it was a lot also to learn that actually my heart and my sensitivity is already very developed, and I feel people very easily. That's also how I can do this job very easily. And a long journey was about really understanding the beauty of my power, which I, out of my sensitivity, had a sometimes even unconscious tendency to reduce my power a little bit, my full, I would say like the full size of my inner dragon, which is also the dark side of power. It can also be a killer, and it can be a force of nature. And to understand that this is not something I have to hide or like kind of like put in a nice box, but this is a life force that wants to serve life. And for me, I am absolutely sure I would have not been able to learn that without relationships and without sexuality, because that was the place where I got the most immediate feedback. Because when you're, let's say you're engaged in sexuality, it's very direct. It's not mental. It's like you feel what's going on with the other person, what's going on in your body. It's like an amazing experiential learning field where there's always feedback and integration happening. So where I am now today is that I'm so much more comfortable with my power and knowing the size of my power. And I'm so much more comfortable with the vulnerability that I have, with my openness of my heart, and that I'm not scared about being very open. And that if I'm open, if I'm emotional, it would mean that I'm a weak man or not strong enough, for all these kind of things that we may have in our mind. And at the same time, that I can be very strong and forceful and directive. And that doesn't mean that I'm not heartful enough. So I'm still practicing, but I'm much more comfortable, and I can still be shy, but I'm even good with that, if that's where I feel in the moment. So I have this constant pushing that I should be different, and like comparing with other men, and how it's like such a freedom to not experience that to that dimension anymore. And as I said, I'm not done, and I think nobody's ever done with all of this. It's a constant practice, but I'm enjoying practicing.
That's great to hear. That's really nice to hear. And you were speaking of a practice. You said the word practice.
Right.
I was wondering if there's anything you could hand out just now.
Yeah.
For all men and women listening now.
Yeah.
So that there could be any exploration, any invitation to, experience, find out something, even today, even now.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to. I'm a big fan of practice. Talk is good, practice is much better. So I would say one thing I would recommend to everybody, but specifically to the man, find something in your life that is a physical practice or exercise. It can be sports, but it can be doing Tai Chi, martial arts, weightlifting, whatever. But do something that engages your body. Dancing is great, whatever. Do something with your body, and you do it regular, and you observe yourself, that what's happening while you do it. Not to get better and faster, but observe how you're breathing, how's your heart rate, how do you feel, the movements of your muscles. And be really curious about that, because that is like one of the main ingredients of becoming a better lover. So that's just like a general recommendations. And for now, what I would invite you, if you can just take a moment to maybe take a deeper breath, and I'll give you a few simple questions that you can then take further. And if we've been speaking a lot and sharing a lot of information, I would really recommend that you maybe, if you're sitting well, like maybe lean back a little bit and take a longer breath and just drop into your body, basically. So you don't need so much to have your mind online, but just take a breath and just relax. There's nothing you have to do now. And maybe start for a moment to see if you can sense your heart. The heart is really like the physical heart, but it's the whole heart area, like your chest. And just see if you have a sense of that. Whatever you sense there, just give it a moment, a couple of breaths. And knowing that this is a very important aspect of your life. And from there, it's like with your breath, you're almost like sink deeper into your body, and you can feel your pelvis and your sexual organs. Maybe also your bum, like your whole lower part. And just, it's like you're using like a light, and you shine it first on the heart, and now you shine it on your lower part, your base. And just notice how is that to move from the heart to the sex. Sex is more referring to what I spoke before about power, about the will, the drive. Just notice how that feels right now. If that's easy, difficult, there's more tension here or there. And just to notice that without analyzing it. If you're kind of like dropping into your primordial seat of power. Taking a couple of breaths. And then I would give you one question. You just like as if you're answering that to yourself. The question is, what I really want in sexuality and relationship is ... And as if like you're asking yourself that question, and you just wait what happens. There's probably different things that come up. And here comes already one practice tip. I would encourage you, because you're not speaking to anybody yet, you're just with yourself, so it's an intimate space. I would encourage you to allow yourself to speak or think without censoring anything right now. Normally we kind of censor out already certain things. Yeah, I would wish, but like, man, that's not so okay. This is a bit taboo, and I shouldn't want that. And all those things have their place. But right now, if you just ask yourself this question, and you really want to know, like, you really want to know what's really there. And maybe there's many things coming up, maybe just one thing, maybe even conflicting things, like I want just to dominate somebody, or I just want love, I just want to chill, or I just want to really go for it, whatever. That's totally fine. It doesn't have to make sense. But to get a sense of what this part of you really desires and wants, because that's a movement, that's a power, that's a drive. We're not saying you need to act on it, but there's a huge healing power to first recognize that I have a lust, a desire, a wish. So if you want to take this further, you can then after this also, or already now, also make some notes about those things. And I would encourage you to afterwards, or the next couple of days, find a person that you really trust. That's important. Somebody you really trust. It can be your partner, but only do it with your partner if you have clarity that this is an exercise of self-exploration. And if you have enough mutual understanding that you can also share something maybe that's maybe even edgy, you don't know. If that's not so clear with your partner, find a friend, a mentor, anybody you trust, and you just say, look, I'd like to share something with you and explore that. And you, for maybe 10 minutes without discussion, just speak what's coming up for you when you ask a question. And then just see how you feel. Can be very liberating, can be also shame coming up. And most importantly, like you said, you start to get informed about what's living inside of you in a deeper place sometimes. And then from there, and that's, of course, you would need another step with that, maybe with that person or with that friend or just with yourself, reflecting and writing. So what of those things that I wrote down, I would really want to experience? And what is possible, either in the bounds of my relationship now or in the way I live right now, what is possible? And take one or two of these things and see if you can, again, bring them back to your relationship, or if you're single now, to see if there are situations where you can explore that in some way that are not harmful to yourself or to anybody, but give you a possibility to explore. Because one thing is about sexuality is very important. We cannot think ourselves into that territory. It's an exploration of your true body self. And then from there, you might experience that some things have a lot of energy as a fantasy. Many people have fantasies, sexual fantasies. That's why the porn industry is $1 billion industry. They all live of fantasies and our habits of wanting quick pleasure. But it doesn't mean that all the fantasies are things we really want. But we need to find out which things we really want and which things are just habits. And so if you take one thing that you really want to explore and find a way to explore it, you're probably going to make quite some progress with that. And you will have more reality. And I'll say this to round this up. One of the very common things I hear from couples is that either one in the couple comes often with a complaint of like, I want more sex, or a complaint like he or she wants so much sex and I don't want. And I don't believe those stories. They are never depicting the full reality. These are probably already patterns where it's easy to say, I want so much sex, but if it would happen, maybe it would already look different, but maybe not. So I would encourage you to go with the question, what do I really want? Share that with somebody, and then take one or two of these things that feel like you could explore and find a way to bring that in, even if it's just an aspect of it, but find a way to communicate and explore that. And that will give you much more insight. And then, of course, that's the beginning of something that can be a very large and long and very powerful journey, which we, of course, working with in the training.
Thank you very much. As we are approaching with our time frame, I suggest asking you a very informative question. What is that you do for men? What is the way you work with men, and what might be the outcome joining your work?
Mm-hmm. 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 Just wondering if you need to translate and check, or it's fine with everybody with the...
I'm waiting for Standa.
Oh, okay.
I hope.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, that's a great question. So the way I work with men, and also what we're starting again, is a year-long training in 5 modules. And what the work consists of, I think I would say, summarizing 2 very important elements. One thing is that we come together. That sounds simple, but actually is very powerful, because men not often have the opportunity to come together and to speak about all these things, all the things we talked about today, with each other, but in a way that is not organized around jokes, is not around shaming each other, is not about performance, who has more of this or that or whatever. And it's also not about consoling and it's okay. It's about clarity and speaking with truth and with power with each other. And that's a huge, huge turbo boost for development and healing. So what I do is invite us as men to come together and hold the space that we can have like a much deeper conversation than we normally ever have with each other. And the other part that I do, or we do together, is to provide a lot of different practices, things that we do in the group room. So normally we have a weekend together in each module, but also practices that you learn and you take home with yourself, and you can make, maybe everybody can mute themselves again. Yeah, thank you. So that you have practices that you can have still.
I take care.
Okay. That you have practices to take home with yourself, that you can basically, that you start to know what you can practice, how you can train for yourself to have a better connection with yourself, a better connection with your partner, better connection to your power, a better connection to your heart, and more clarity, like what is it that you want to actually develop in yourself. So there's physical exercises, there's a lot of emotional practices, because it's a lot also about emotional connection and relating, because that is one of the biggest regulators of attraction and disconnection between men and women, or in intimate relationships. And there's also practices like meditation that just for yourself, you don't need to wait for a partner to practice. You can practice every moment with yourself. So there's this aspect of the community coming together, and the aspect of we working together. And the paradoxical thing is, what I've noticed many times, that when men are forming stronger relationships with other men, their relationships with women always get better. Bless you. And this is something it's a little bit of a lost wisdom in our modern culture, but it's something that traditional indigenous communities have done for thousands of years. So we're just rediscovering the power of what it means to be together with your own polarity. And eventually it leads, I would say, to more freedom, the freedom to be as masculine, as feminine, as strong, as relaxed, whatever you feel is right for you in your life, in your sexuality, in your relationships, and in your life. So it's not that you come out like as this prototype of man, but you come out with more inner choice and inner freedom, and less shame, less pressure, and more capacity to enjoy, because it's great to be alive. It's powerful, it's challenging, but it's really beautiful. And we have a huge gift and an opportunity to learn when we are alive. So let's make use of it. It's fun.
Thank you very much. Very shortly said. I have to sum up that I was part of the training many years ago, and I have to say it liberated myself. It liberated my energy in a way that I would never expect. I didn't even know I was in prison. And I found out, thanks to your work, which we started together 8 years ago. Okay, so I was wondering if there are any questions. Kamile, s námi, máme nějaké otázky. Pokud, asi řekne Standa, teď jsem ve kanále. Pokud máte nějaké dotazy, ptejte se. Prosím, buď to do chatu, anebo prostě odepněte mikrofon a zeptejte se Gregora na cokoliv, co potřebujete. So we're waiting for questions, if there are any to ask.
Zatím tady otázky v chatu nejsou, jsou tam pouze komentáře.
So we have only comments, no questions so far. Okay. Pokud budou nějaké otázky, ještě máme chvilku, tak se buď to stihněte zeptat tady v chatu, anebo potom dodatečně v e-mailu, protože ještě vám přijde e-mail se záznamem. Tady je podnět od Pavla Piskáčka, že i komentáře můžeme komentovat. Mně tady asi k tomu napadá, díky za podnět. Je tu otázka od Felixe. There's a question from Felix. What principles are the best to base a human community or man community on?
Well, that's a good question. I would say, if I would have to sum it up to 2 words, which are representing principles, I would say it would be clarity and compassion. And then in a way would be the masculine and the feminine principles, because what we do, or also the way I work, when we come together in a community, in a circle, what we need in order that this becomes like a journey we're doing together and that we're together on it, we have to see that there is a form of support and wanting that everybody thrives in this community. Because very often when we come together in groups or in teams, there is unconscious power dynamics and unconscious competitions and rivalries and comparisons going on. So we need to make aware, look, if you are getting weaker, I am not getting stronger in life. Rather, the principle of brotherhood is that if you go stronger and we are feeling we're part of one journey or brotherhood, the brotherhood of men, and we are both getting stronger. So your weakness doesn't make me stronger, which often is the way we unconsciously operate. And men compete with each other. So I'm afraid of the strong man and I push down a little bit on the weaker man and I just find my space there. So the principle of mutuality and support is very important. And for that to happen, you need like a sense of like, again, like the heart. It's like, yeah, I feel how you struggle and it touches me, and I allow that to also touch me, and I feel for you. I feel for your pain, because we as men, we carry a tremendous amount of pain, and we are often very good in hiding that. even in sexuality, there's a lot of difficult things that are going on there, a lot of tragedies and painful experiences and hurts and wounds and shame and all these things. So we need a space where we can share these things and we are met with like a warm heart, because that's what creates healing. And that's originally, principally speaking, what we would need to get from our mother and from the feminine. But if we only together in a warm-hearted space, it could become very, let's say, sleepy after a while. That it gets very nice and we understand each other, but there is no real confrontation. And for real growth, I also need masculine support, which I would call clarity. It's a strong sound in the background. And what that means, clarity or masculine support, is that I also confront things that I see in you, and I just don't let you slip into your patterns and in your habits. I also kind of like say like, hey, wait a moment, what are you doing? You're either hurting yourself or you're hurting somebody else. And I can, simply speaking, call out your bullshit. And so when we have that in place, that means like I can confront, but I can confront you with an open heart, and I can meet you with an open heart, but my power is still there to call out bullshit when I see it. Then we create a very powerful circle together. So that'd be my take on the principles, how we work together. And that of course then is the art of being together in relationships where there is love and where there is also strength and grounding. And it's absolutely possible.
Thank you very much. Actually, few more questions came up, and as we are approaching the time deadline, I just get to one question, and it's Michael is asking. He's saying that he's having a trouble finding a joint talk about this topic. If you have any experience, any of misunderstanding or rejection regarding this topic among men.
That sharing this among men or sharing this with an intimate partner, do you know?
Sharing this among men.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know any man who doesn't have an experience of feeling disregarded, judged, shamed, bullied, ridiculed, when you bring out your vulnerabilities or your difficulties. But that's the unconscious way of how we operate in the world. I mean, it starts in childhood, or it starts in schools and starts in kindergarten, you know, like how children, if there is not a clear parenting role that are giving out clarity and compassion, children can be cruel to the max with each other, you know, bullying. And especially also in the trainings, this comes up a lot, that men have been very much hurt, of course, by women and mothers, but men have been hurt by other men, you know, picking out the weak one, ridiculing and shaming each other. So that, I think we all know that to some degree, whether we were the bully or the bullied, or maybe sometimes both. So, and that's actually a huge healing experience that we can create in the groups, that we can come in and we can show our vulnerability, and we all know everybody is suffering, and actually everybody wants to be heard and everybody wants to support. We just sometimes don't know how. And even the bullies are the ones maybe that hurt the most, but they don't know. They don't know how to get to that place inside themselves anymore. So what they do is shame somebody else because they feel so much shame inside themselves. So yes, that is a very, very common experience, and it can really turn around your inner world when you notice wow, it's possible. The biggest myth for men is that some men think, I have a problem, I'm weak, I'm a failure, whatever, blah, blah, blah. All the other guys or these guys don't have a problem. They are not suffering, they got it together. And this is not true at all. I have not met one single person on this planet, and I don't think I will, that is not suffering. The question is whether they are conscious of it, and if they are willing to show that vulnerability. But that's not up to us. Maybe some will not, but we can come together and do the work, and that will strengthen us all. And next time you see somebody being bullied, you can become a force that says, like, wait a moment, that's not how we're doing it. Or with your children and with your sons, we can teach them that there's a different society and way of being together possible.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, our precious time is just running out, so I will take my word and do some summary, if you don't mind, in Czech.
Perfect.
Já vám moc všem děkuju za dnešní účast. Mrzí mě, že se nedostaneme ke všem otázkám, ještě jich tady pár je. Pokusím se jenom v krátkosti z vlastní zkušeností i k ním vyjádřit. Jirka se tu ptá, jak pracovat s plachostí při seznamování. Jirko, mohu vás ujistit, že pokud se vydáte s Gregorem na tuhle cestu, určitě si dokážete poradit s jeho metodama a podporou, jak plachost překonat a zvládnout. Sám ji znám z vlastní zkušenosti. A Martinovi Černému vzkazuji, že samozřejmě ano, rituály přechodu jsou moc důležité, sám se jim věnuji už mnoho roků a souhlasím s vámi. A tento výcvik, o kterém je tady řeč, je jedním z takových velkých přechodových rituálů do dospělosti, do větší zodpovědnosti tématu sexuality. A pak tady ještě píše něco Pavel, k tomu se dostaví později. A já mám milou povinnost připomenout, že ještě 13. září se koná další webinář věnovaný konfliktům a intimním vztahům. Bude to opět s Gregorem, ale hostovat ho bude Zdeněk a Šárka Weberovi. Takže jste srdečně zváni 13. září. Pozvánka vám dorazí do e-mailu po skončení tohoto webináře, kde se také dozvíte o tom, kde je k dispozici záznam tohoto webináře dnešního. A samozřejmě srdečně vás zvu do výcviku umění vědomého vztahu, který už má opravdu dlouhou 8letou historii v České republice. Já jsem si stál u zrodu toho výcviku a obrovsky mu fandím. Je to moje srdeční záležitost a upřímně přeju každému muži, aby něčím takovým prošel, protože to považuji za mateřskou školku rozvoje mužské síly a mužské sexuality a přeju každému chlapovi, aby něco takového mohl absolvovat, aby se mohl cítit dobře s tím, že je muž a s tím, že miluje to, že je muž. Takže moc vám děkujeme za dnešní večer. Is there anything, Gregor, you would like to say as a last word for the webinar, like invitation to your training or whatever else? I said in Czech just now, but up to you.
Yeah, first of all, I want to say thank you, Václav, for hosting this with all your power and with your heart and feeling your mission for this work. It's touching me again and again. We've been doing this, I think we started 2013, so it's almost 10 years. So it's a long time, and a lot of men went through it, and I've heard many beautiful change stories also. So I'm grateful that you're making this possible. Yeah, I think Camille just posted also. I really want to invite people also to the webinar around conflict, because that's such a huge topic also. And you cannot work with sexuality and creating connection with other people or with intimate relationships without looking at conflict. It's simply not possible. And if anybody feels called to come in, I really want to encourage men to take the leap. And especially if you feel a bit like shy or insecure or weird about coming together with other men and talk about sexuality, I can assure you we're creating a very safe space. That's like a big part of the way I work. And there is so much more liberation, like Václav said, possible. And shyness is not something you have to overcome. It's actually can be a good travel companion with yourself on that journey. So don't let it come in the way, just take it with you. We're all going to be nervous when we stand there for the first time. You're going to be in good company. And I just love to invite you to come and join us in this circle and go on a journey of finding out who you want to be as a man. It's my honor.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for tonight. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you for lovely talk, deep insights, and see you soon.
Yes.
Okay. Vám ostatním ze srdce přeju krásný večer. Díky za vaše podněty. Bylo jich hodně. Vidět, že vás téma táhne a zajímá. A pokusíme se na zbylé dotazy odpovědět v e-mailu. A pokud vás to zavolá, jste srdečně zváni. Ještě jsou nějaká volná místa v tom výcviku. Podrobnosti se dozvíte e-mailem. Pro dnešek vám moc děkujeme a přejeme krásný večer. Mějte se krásně.
OK. Dobrý večer. Díky moc.